You just got a brand new bolt action rifle, you're getting prepped to go shoot some long range distance precision rifle shooting, and you're probably unsure how do you even get started. Well, today on the range, I'm gonna walk you through my process when I get a brand new rifle, how I'm going to spend one range day just gathering data, getting a good zero, and then doing some drills with the particular rifle that I'm running so that I can actually be squared away when I go to shoot those long distance shots. Today, we're gonna be running the Outlier 6.5 Creedmoor. This is a Savage Axis action with their Backdraft barrel from Outlier, the Outlier suppressor, and Arkin sent out a brand new optic. So this is a brand new to me rifle, and I'm hoping that through this video, you're gonna find out that that first range day, although it's extremely critical, it's also very simple if you have your processes dialed in. So I hope this is helpful. Let's dive into it. I'm a big proponent of having an objective for any range day. All that means is you go out to the range with a plan. It doesn't have to be a perfect plan, but you've got to have an objective for your range day, or else what you'll find is you're just going to waste ammo. You're going to ultimately waste your time. And if you're not gathering data properly, you won't have any information to build a platform off of. So let's talk about the objectives that I want you to go to this first range day with. And then throughout this video, I'm going to explain why they matter and then how you actually implement them in practice. But the first objective with this for me is to get a feel for a new rifle. Anytime you buy a new firearm of any kind, it's going to be a learning curve as you get used to things like the trigger, the action, the stock, the grip, how things work, how the gun works, how many rounds you can get down range before you see mirage, especially if you're running a suppressor like I am. Those things all stack up and they add up to your experience as you go out into the real world of shooting precision rifles. And if you don't have a good basis and you're not familiar with your firearm, again, as you get out to distance, you're just going to be wasting ammunition. And when we are shooting precision rifles with match grade ammunition, we're often spending $2 or more per round. The last thing you want to do is go out to a range day, shoot about 150 rounds, spend $300 on ammo, and walk away without having any information that you can then build upon. So that's the first thing. Let's get a feel for the rifle. Second, on a normal range day, what I'm going to do is bring a couple different types of ammunition. I'm going to establish a rough zero with one of them, and then I'm going to also run several different types of ammo so that I can figure out what the gun likes to shoot. Every rifle's different, every barrel's different, every action's different, whether you're running a certain can, certain barrel length, certain twist rate. All of those things add up, and you may see differences in your performance based on the ammunition that you're using. Now, there is a case to be made that you should break in a barrel first. That's going to depend on the manufacturing processes of the barrel, what sort of break-in procedures happen at the factory. But it's a good rule of thumb for me, for any of my precision rifles, that I've got to shoot between 100 and 200 rounds before a rifle is fully broken in. In that period, it's very typical for me to see a velocity increase in the barrel. That's going to change your point of impact. That's going to change the data that you're getting on your Garmin if you're using one like me. It's going to affect all of the variables that happen to stack when we're shooting precision rifles out of distance. So the other thing I'm going to be looking for when I'm on this first range day are any inconsistencies. And that's not just the gun, that's me. That's the inputs that I'm putting into the rifle, whether I'm pulling left, right, up, down. How does the trigger feel? How is everything functioning? The eye box, the riser for my cheek, all of those things I need to dial in and figure out, am I on a good path with this particular rifle? Because again, if it's not comfortable, if I don't have a good feel for it, I haven't built a good foundation, then ultimately I'm not going to perform very well when we're out at 500 yards, 700, 800, 900, 1,000 yards. So that data that you learn first is extremely critical to the long storyline that you're going to be laying out with your particular rifle. And on top of that, what I'm looking to do is establish a solid zero. We'll talk about what a proper zero looks like, and I'll show you an example on my cardboard once I establish that. But a lot of people mistake what a proper zero is, and they think they have it, but they don't. At 100 yards, you might say it's good enough. At 1,000 yards, you're missing by 20 or 30 feet. It all adds up over distance. The last thing that I'm looking to do on this range day is to get a lot of velocity data. I don't just want 5 rounds of velocity data. I want like 20 rounds, 30 rounds, 40 rounds worth of velocity data on my Garmin chronograph so that I have accurate data, which I will then eventually put into my Kestrel, which is going to give me the ability to true this rifle out at 800 or 900 yards. So all of that is the topics that are gonna happen later down the road. For this first range day, we're just gathering that data, getting a good feel for the rifle, and ultimately having that information that we can build upon so that I can make sure and you can make sure that we can perform at a distance. When people are talking about building a foundation with a precision long rifle, they're talking about the proper positioning behind the rifle and using every tool to your advantage to keep the gun as stable as possible. So what you'll notice is I've got one of the Coltac bags underneath the stock here. I've got my bipod out front. I can load the gun. I can kind of dig my feet into the ground and give a little bit of pressure into the gun, make sure that I'm stable. Because ultimately, as we're zeroing, one of the things that happens is we're putting inputs into the gun. And that means that if as I'm breaking the trigger, I'm kind of shifting the barrel or the action to the left, I'm gonna impact to the right. If I'm pulling the trigger back and I'm kind of biasing a little bit of leftward pressure, you can find that you actually can shift the rounds and the impacts to the left. Everything that you do, even at 100 yards, is going to affect the impact downrange. And a lot of people just overlook this stuff, and then ultimately what happens is you go out the distance, even if you're just a hunter and you're shooting 300 yards, you try to take an animal at 300 yards and you realize that your zero was just whack. It was all just crazy. It wasn't good data. If you can't eliminate your variables going into the gun, the data that you're gonna get printed on paper, the bullet holes are the data, are ultimately going to be skewed, and you can find that you just chase that zero all over the place. And many range days I've had that happen. I've had really bad days where ultimately I don't do my part, and because of that, I have bad data downrange. Sometimes it's better to just pack up and go home, start fresh on another day. Another mistake that I see a lot of people make is they approximate the 100 yards. So what I always do is I grab my rangefinder. This is just a little Vortex rangefinder. You wanna make sure your muzzle, where the bullet is exiting the barrel, is 100 yards from the target or whatever zero you're setting out for. For me, with these precision guns, I zero at 100 yards. But if you're zeroing at 30 yards, make sure your gun's at exactly 30 from the target, etc. So when I start with zeroing a gun like this, my foundation's gonna be good. I've got a good proper grip behind the gun. I make sure with my bubble level that everything is squared up and level to the target. That matters as well. And then I'm gonna start at 30 yards. Sometimes I'll walk it back to 50 yards then, but I don't wanna waste ammo. I wanna make sure that those first impacts with a brand new rifle are not 3 feet off the target and I'm just burning ammo trying to guess. So that's the first thing, range find, good foundation behind the gun. Make sure you've done some dry fire practice so that you know your inputs into the gun. And then once I get that initial group on paper, at 30 yards, I'm gonna make rough adjustments. And the way we're doing that is obviously just turning the turrets. And I know that sounds super basic, but with a reticle like what's on this Archian EP5 Gen 2, I can actually use the milliradian dashes. This is a first focal plane scope. So I found that with my first rounds, I was impacting low and right. I can hold the gun exactly on the spot where I was aiming, and I can make adjustments without moving the gun, and you will see the reticle track over to your bullet impacts. It's just a rough adjustment, and then I can fine tune from there. But my objective at 30 yards is just get it close, so I know that when I go out to 100, I'm not wasting the ammunition. So we're gonna use those turrets to make that rough adjustment. Finer adjustments are gonna happen after we put our initial groups down at 100, and we want that group. A proper zero is going to be exactly on your point of aim at 100 yards, not a 1/4 inch to the left or a 1/4 inch high. That's not good enough if we're shooting a precision rifle. We wanna make sure that that group is proper before we move on and start doing any drills or any other work. That's the most important thing that you can dial in right now, is making sure that that foundation at 30 yards, 50 yards, and then eventually 100 yards is exactly where it needs to be. This little piece of kit is gonna become your best friend. This Garmin chronograph is frankly the best chronograph that I've found. It's one of the most unique, super easy to use. It comes with this little tripod. And if you're watching any of the B-roll in this video, you will see that this Garmin is out every single round. And the reason is because I want to gather as much data as possible. And I did find that when I was looking through my last session, this was actually kind of shocking. but the extreme spread with 69 shots was 99.6 feet per second. And when we're looking at the standard deviation is 21 feet per second. So that's actually kind of disappointing for me. I was running Hornady match 147 grain ammunition. I don't like to see a standard deviation that's 21 feet per second. And what that's gonna tell me, again, we're learning data here, is I may actually just go straight to hand loading for this particular rifle, or I'm gonna switch ammunition types to try to find a standard deviation that's more acceptable. My hand loads are normally about 8 to 9 feet per second standard deviation. Really good match ammo that I found in my 6 ARC was sitting around the 6 to 7 feet per second standard deviation. So all that means is that between shots, there could be as much as 21 feet per second on average, faster or slower between each round. And it will change your impact downrange. It's going to affect where you're actually impacting on your target. So having the lowest standard deviation possible is ideal. Factory ammunition is always a balance. It's a give or take. It's not as good as hand-loaded precision ammunition, but this little tool is just a lifesaver. It's expensive, but it is so worth it. You don't have to worry about light or sunlight affecting things. You just set it down close to your muzzle, I think within like 12 or 15 inches, and this is going to give you every single shot's velocity, your foot-pounds of your round, and this is the data that you need to be able to enter into your Kestrel to be able to true your rifle. And that's a topic for a different day. Just understand that on this first range day, you should be gathering this data. Let's talk about an acceptable zero, because a lot of people mistake what that means. And I've seen all kinds of things over the years where, take this group over here. Now, all of these groups that I was working on here, I was making adjustments. That's why they're not super tight. We'll show you my final group then. But there's people that'll say, you know, at 100 yards, that's about a 1-inch group. And they're gonna say, you know what, that's good enough for my deer hunting. I can hit a deer. And that's true. If that's all you're doing at 100 yards is shooting deer, that's fine. There's even people that'll tighten their group up like this and say, you know, that's a good enough group for me. Or worse, what'll happen is people will see that they're biasing to the right. They'll make adjustments to the left with their scope, but they won't actually go down range and double check, like basically adjust their turret, bring the rounds to the left, and then verify. They'll just make an adjustment and say, you know what, I made the adjustment, I measured it off, we're good to go. You should always not just make the adjustment, but then send the extra rounds down range so that you dial your zero in perfectly. And with our C-zone targets here, these diamonds are perfect for zeroing because they're very small, they're very fine. You can put your crosshair dead center on it, and it's gonna give you a finer aiming point versus using a 1-inch circle, which a lot of people will do. And there's nothing wrong with a 1-inch circle, but we want a finer aiming point so that we can be held honest and make sure that we're doing our part to a high level of precision. So let's talk about what an acceptable zero is gonna look like. This is my last group that I shot right here, and I had 2 flyers. So I actually called it on camera when I pulled that one high right and I pulled that one high left. That was me. I also pulled one far left over here. But the rest of that group, if you look how tiny that hole is, this is 9 rounds right here. So 7 of those rounds went right over top of that diamond. And I know right now, some of you are saying, well, Jared, you're a hypocrite because that's not perfectly on that diamond. The reality is here, right now, with a scope that has 0.1 milliradians of adjustment, if I tried to bring it right or tried to bring it down, my impacts would actually be down and to the right. There are limitations with my scope and my setup that I can only dial it in so much with the fine tuning. We can work that out as we true the rifle out at distance, where those adjustments are gonna be a larger adjustment. But that's what an acceptable group to me would look like. And that's what you should be striving for. And the last thing that I'm gonna do on this range day is a drill here with my scope where I'm gonna aim constantly on this 0 milliradian diamond. And then I'm gonna dial up 0.5 mils, 1 mil, 1.5, and 2 mils. And what we're doing is we're always aiming on the 0 mil, but I wanna make sure that that brand new scope that I have is actually tracking properly when I put those inputs into it. So I fired my last 2 rounds. They were these 2 rounds here. I did have to make some adjustments because when I actually zeroed my turrets, which we'll talk about in a second, I inadvertently moved my turrets, which is something that can happen. And again, it's why when you're adjusting your turrets, don't just, you know, take for granted that you did it. Put rounds down range and make sure that you did it properly. But I'm gonna aim here. I adjusted 0.5 mils. These right now, I immediately on camera said, oh, I pulled left. but the elevation is proper on these. Then I dialed 1 mil, still holding down here. Those are my 2 rounds. Dialed 1.5 mils, 2 rounds, dialed 2 mils, 2 rounds, and then I brought everything back down and I aimed on this circle and I pulled high left again. So I didn't do my part on these two, but on camera, again, I called it high left, high left. But if your scope is properly set up, it's a high quality scope, you should be able to take your turrets and just turn them wherever. I just turned 3 mils, turn it back to my 0 stop, which I actually didn't set my 0 stop. I got to do that again. But set it back to your 0 and it should return back to 0. So when we're doing that drill, I'll get behind the gun, I'll fire my 2 rounds, 3 rounds, 4 rounds, whatever you want to do on that diamond that says 0 mil. Then I'm going to turn it up, 0.5 mils, fire the same amount of rounds, holding on the exact same spot. You should see your rounds rise to that 0.5 mil diamond. I'll go to 1 mil, do the same thing, 1.5 mils and 2 mils, make sure everything's tracking properly, bring it back down to 0. And again, what that's doing is telling me with these minute adjustments, does this scope return back down to 0? And on the C-Zone cardboard target, you actually can do the same thing for your windage. You hold on the 0 mil, you can adjust left, bring it back to 0, adjust right, bring it back to 0. Now, 0.5 mils, 1 mil, it's not that much of an adjustment. If you really wanted to track, you should do more than 1 mil, 2 mil, 3 mil. But it does give you a little bit more confidence as you're working with a brand new optic that when you put inputs into that turret, you are functionally going to be able to return it back to 0. You've had a successful range day because you took intentional steps to gather data with your brand new rifle, which is going to set you up for success as you go further down the road into precision rifle shooting. The question is, what do you do next? What would the next step, if you have daylight on a range day like this, what could you be doing in order to gather more skills, even if you're only limited to 100 yards like we are here? I think a lot of people think that you need a long distance range to be able to work drills with your precision rifle. The reality is you should be spending a lot of time at 100 yards perfecting your inputs into the rifle and making sure your 0 is perfected before shooting distance anyway. So don't write off your range if you only have 100 yards. My next step with a rifle like this would be to grab some of our C-Zone cardboard targets again. We could be doing dot drills, and specifically what I'd be looking at doing with that is shooting from different positions. So not every shooting position is going to be from prone. Some of them are going to be sort of sitting, kneeling, working off tripods, various different positions, using structures. You can really work those fundamentals, especially after you've gotten your prone shooting down or shooting off of a shooting bench like I was doing in this video. Then you can expand your skill set even further to push your skill set and learn more data about your rifle and basically figure out where you need to grow as a shooter. And then you can integrate steel targets, you can do different transitions, you can move between different shooting positions and time yourself to just, again, continue to push your skill set. But if you're looking for a great cardboard target to help you on that journey, I developed this C-Zone cardboard target for that specific purpose. It's not just for precision rifles. We also have a side B of this target, which has your A-Zone, C-Zone, basically your typical USPSA scoring zones. This is great for pistol work or even fighting rifles, semi-auto AR-15s and things like that. We've got a 6-inch circle, 8-inch circle, a bunch of 1-inch dots, and obviously the diamonds that we talked about. This is an invaluable tool when you're going out and learning that first range day, your precision rifle, and making sure you are doing your part. And then the steel targets really come into play as you're shooting out at distances. Again, you can use them at 100 yards. Our targets are rated for even closer than 100 yards, but you can incorporate steel targets out at distance, and you can use smaller and smaller steel targets to have immediate feedback with an acceptable target zone for your skill set so that you can work efficiently and grow that skill set going forward as you're learning precision rifle shooting. So if you want to learn more about these targets, we're gonna put some links down in the description. Again, they're super inexpensive. They're available. We keep them in stock. We manufacture these right in Pennsylvania. They're an invaluable tool that's gonna help you to become better. If you wanna support the channel, that's a great way to do it. I'm curious what you think about this video. Was it helpful to you in your journey? I sincerely hope that it was. This is information that was taught to me by people that I care about that are way further down the road. I'm never gonna express or never gonna state that I'm an expert because I'm not. I am newer in the precision rifle journey, but this is information that was taught to me that has been extremely valuable to me on this journey. I hope it's equally valuable to you. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comment section. Let me know how I can help you. You can also email our team at info@tatargets.com with specific questions, or if you're wondering about steel targets or paper targets, which ones are best for you, we're happy to answer those questions and get you pointed in the right direction. So let's engage down in the comment section. And if you appreciated this video, like, subscribe, and maybe share it with a buddy that just bought their first rifle so that they get started on a good path. You're helping them save a lot of time and money so they don't make mistakes that actually hurt them in the future. Appreciate you all.